I also want to add a few things that I didn't touch on part two of the video. The Francis Scott Key Bridge was actually hit by a ship named after Salvador Dali, who painted the Broken Bridge in the Dream in 1945. Salvador Dali had this thing where he would have this trick where he'd fall asleep with a key in his hand, and when it dropped, he'd wake up and then draw his dream or vision of the future. That's kind of how he did a lot of things, and that's why his stuff is so surreal and weird and trippy. Another thing I want to point out, if you start looking at it, it's so strange. You actually see him sitting underneath the bridge, and I want to read this from the actual painting. It says, also in the classic vein, this work reflects Dali's continuing interest in theatrical scenes and ballet design. Wearing the Catalan red Barentina, Dali places himself at the bottom of a bridge in the Ampurian plain as he had drifted to sleep. In his dream, the ruined bridge transforms into a stairway upon which allegorical figures drift upward towards heaven. During his classic period, such angelic figures replace the anguished figures of previous years, and Dali's techniques begins to change as well. Turning away from his highly detailed, thinly applied layers of oil, Dali starts to apply a looser classical glazing technique used by the great masters such as Rembrandt. And if you actually look at this painting closely and zoom in, it's really strange. He's got some weird angelic, what he calls angelic creatures, which definitely are not angelic. And you will notice a white horse and a figure sitting on top of the broken bridge where the stairway goes to, I'm assuming, heaven. Very strange. Another thing I want to point out that I didn't touch on in part two of the video, Leave the World Behind movie was actually released for streaming on Netflix on December 8th, 2023, which is 12/8/128. The runtime for the movie is actually 2 hours and 18 minutes, which is 128. I also want to point out what you probably know is Obama co-produced it, so he had his hand in this whole thing. And if you remember, there was these weird low frequency sounds during the movie that people couldn't hear, but you can hear them subliminally. I have a video on my page where these people did the research of it and talk about it. Another interesting thing is the Chiefs beat the Baltimore Ravens on January 28th with this 128. And I need to point out the deer in the movie Leave the World Behind. I told you that Dali, the goddess, the Georgian goddess, is the patron of hooved animals, which are deer and ibex. And you'll notice that in the movie Leave the World Behind, that's what you see, the deer, and people couldn't understand what was actually going on with the deer. So I just wanted to point all that out so you know. Another 128 connection is in Strong's, in Hebrew, Adamah, which is a city in Naphtali, but it means the earth. And 128 in Greek is Ahithiopes, which is Ethiopian, which comes from etho, to burn, and ops, an eye. So it technically means to burn an eye.